Think about a lifestyle business. That's fine if you want to become just a lifestyle business, of course, but if you want to get to a point of scaling your business globally, you need to really have a plan in order to get funding, in order to get that global scale. But just because you've got the best product does not mean that you'll do the best in your market. Think about the Betamax versus VHS example. For those of you who are old enough to remember, Betamax was launched by Sony, and that was a far more superior product technically than its rival VHS. VHS was a videotape that allowed you to record films on TV and also obviously rent movies from video stores, for those of you who don't know. But VHS ended up winning, mainly because Sony failed to drive partnerships with hardware manufacturers and therefore didn't get the global scale. And so VHS became the global market leader in that format until it was overtaken by DVD. Well, running a B2B is very hard, as we know. Okay, you're hearing a lot of talks about best practice over the last day or two. And what we see typically from the startups that we work with is they tend to work very closely on getting their first product market fit at the early stage. Now, we know that's important, and of course, they tend to work on building that technology and building a product that can hopefully meet the needs of customers. But the challenge is they try very quickly to get to Series A, which is very important, of course. And if you're lucky enough to do that, we see startups focus very heavily on building those early products, but don't tend to focus on understanding why customers are actually buying their products in the first place. They tend to be product-driven. They tend to be, which is fine, they tend to, at the end of the day, build a product and try and get that early adoption with customers, but don't try and think about product roadmap. Really try and think about how they're going to grow their customer base. They try and get those early logos, which is great, of course, but sometimes we'll end up building technology and customizing it too much, and that will end up being a challenge for most companies. And when you get to Series B, for example, or Series A, just before, you end up hiring a sales guy. Really important at that point because you want to make sure that your founders are not exactly involved in the sales process anymore, and that's great. But you'll get the early logos, you'll get the early wins. But quite often we see startups forking their technology too much, and having different deployments of their technology in different customers. And that's good enough to get your Series B, perhaps, which is great. You'll go on a hiring spree and build more salespeople without really thinking about sales process too much. And we see this quite a lot within startups. They tend to just add more bodies, get more logos, and that's great. But you end up having a situation where you're supporting and managing multiple versions of your technology. We see this quite a lot. And you end up doing too much customization. You end up getting the illusion of product market fit because you think your technology is getting traction, but actually you're deploying lots of different technologies into different customers. Because you're not focused on your roadmap at that point, we see a lot of startups turning into consulting companies. And we end up seeing lots of churn at that point. Okay? You end up pivoting, becoming a consulting business. You get more churn because you're not focused on delivering a roadmap that you promised to your customers or your initial customers, and then you're up as the walking dead. So growing a B2B startup is hard, as we know, and we think about building technology partnerships really early. It's really important. Okay, so people think about building go-to-market programs like when you get Series A and things like that. But actually, where we see startups, particularly in the B2B space, getting the most traction is when they start building technology partnerships early. So that means that you should think about infrastructure, building your technology on infrastructure that provides the ability and capability to drive that product market fit as early and quickly as you possibly can. So we're talking about technology providers that have the best traction, the best track record, the most success with other customers. We're talking about having a cloud provider, for example, like AWS, who can drive and help you with programs like AWS Activate, and give you the credits to help improve and evolve your developer life cycles as quickly as you can, to get that product market fit as quickly as you can. We see too many startups there, like effectively credit hopping and going across different cloud platforms, and that's a bad thing to do, because you should start thinking about like building that relationship with your technology partners early, and not focus on re-platforming across multiple providers, because that's really meaning you're taking longer to get to that product market fit than you would normally have to do so. That's really important. When you start getting a Series A, if you're looking to do so, it's really important to start thinking about your go-to-market partnerships. And that's when it's like really important to think about things like sales process. So what is the sales process that you're going to drive? Creating those playbooks, making sure that you're a customer-focused roadmap company as opposed to creating and developing customizations for different customers. Don't get tracked into the illusion of building custom solutions for each customer just to get logos. It's really important that you stay focused on being a product-led roadmap company instead, and that's really important. But also thinking about the sales strategy. You know, what is it that you can do in order to drive sales within your company? Thinking about go-to-market with partners like AWS, for example, who can drive go-to-market partnerships. Maybe a bit early to think about at this stage, but it's really important that you do so. Most companies that we see, the most successful companies that we see, do have a great success when they think about working with customer success teams. Product-led growth is really important. Customer-led success teams will help reduce churn, will help improve upsell and cross-sell opportunities, which is really important, okay? Because once you build that customer success team, it means the start of the customer journey is when you close the deal, not the end of the journey, okay? And we're seeing that as a big, big success for those companies that strive growth. So when companies get to a point where they get to the end of their market, then they need to invest in new technology, perhaps to drive new additional upsell, cross-sell opportunities. That's either via acquisition or new product development. And we see that as a major sort of area for most customers to help build on. And again, it's really important that you have those kind of areas to help with that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is two things. First of all, it's really important that people think about scaling through technology these days. So things like building a sales process is very important. That's a people thing. But actually scaling through things like marketplaces, technology levers that will enable you to reduce sales cycles of things like procurement and things like deployment, implementation, which is extremely important to do so these days. And it helps reduce the people time in order to get your product out there and scale beyond that. One of the most important things we see, though, is the ability for companies to drive new sales through partnerships and kind of matching people together, okay, in order to go to market together and drive things like co-selling, sell with type motions. It's really important that you drive and match the people together into companies in order to drive those kind of sales motions. For example, solution architects need to get trained up in both technologies on both sides, and that's really important because if both of you get their sort of certifications and technology to be able to deliver on that, then obviously that's a really important thing in order to show customers that you have the right capability to solve a much bigger problem together as one company rather than the sum of the parts. We've only really talked a little bit about how we work together with partners today, but I want to really invite you to the AWS stand where we could talk more about what we've learned about working through partnerships with startups, scale-ups, and grow-up companies. But in the meantime, please come to the AWS stand and talk to us. And in the meantime, I want to introduce one of our successful companies, and that's Matthew Scullion, who is the CEO of Matillion. Welcome on stage, Matthew.
Thanks, John.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning. My name's Matthew, CEO and founder of Matillion. So we're an ISV in the data space. We make data transformation software purpose-built for cloud data warehouses. So if any of you are as part of your businesses, innovating with data on platforms like Redshift or Snowflake or BigQuery, please feel free to check us out at Matillion.com. It's a really exciting place to be. Every company today is competing with data to improve their products, streamline their processes, understand their businesses better. They increasingly, by default, are doing it on the cloud and using data lake and data warehouse technology, and we're lucky to be the only company that purpose-builds software for that use case. A little bit about our history. We launched our product in 2015. I'm going to come on to a timeline in a moment. To date, we've raised $60 million in venture capital, taking us to Series C. That's off the back of triple-digit revenue growth over the last 3 years, and we'll repeat that again this year. Today we have about 700 customers, actually. This has gone a little out of date. And lucky to be the #1 rated product globally on AWS Marketplace, which hangs off the back of what Jonno was just talking about. Matillion was actually born on AWS, and in fact on AWS Marketplace as a route to market. And so what I'm going to try and do over the next few minutes is just talk about our experiences on AWS Marketplace, but also more generally building a business on a public cloud platform like AWS, and hopefully a little bit of lessons learned just about nailing and scaling go-to-market in a SaaS startup. So we were actually launched prior to the launch of the product we're now known for. The company was founded by myself and a colleague back in a shoebox-sized room back in January 2011. Just so I can help contextualize the story, quick show of hands to everybody who is in a similar situation to me, running their own SaaS business of any size. Higher, I can't see. Oh, okay, so most of the room isn't, right. So good luck to all those that are. It's a fun journey. We set our business up 2011 doing something else. We were doing managed business intelligence solutions for medium-sized, predominantly UK-based companies. It meant we built a lot of data warehouses. We were being slowed down and frustrated by what we felt were tools that were great for building data warehouses, but that weren't built for the cloud. And so after scouring the market to find something better and failing to do so, we elected to use the knowledge we'd amassed about building cloud data warehouses to create our own product. It worked quite well. It was 100 times faster than the technology we'd been using and buying off the shelf, shaved more than half the time required to deliver a data warehouse project off. And so we launched it for commercial sale in October 2015. And we identified AWS Marketplace as an ideal route to market for us. Our customers at that time were Redshift customers. So by default, they were AWS customers. They were already in the AWS console. This was a way of delivering our software to a worldwide audience of, at that time, over 1 million, many more now, AWS customers, and doing so inside their virtual private cloud and in a way that was easy for them to buy. As evidenced by the fact that our very first customer turned out to be a large university in Melbourne, Australia. Now, we're based in Manchester, UK. If you dig a vertical hole underneath our office and keep going till you pop out on the other side, you pop out in Melbourne, Australia. And so that was a nice sort of demonstration that AWS Marketplace was a great route to market for us. Why we liked AWS Marketplace is it gave us this instant worldwide access to millions of users, yes, but also gave us a low-friction launch of our software, and this, of course, relevant on the marketplace or through other routes to market. We put a lot of time early on into making it very easy as we could, for customers to access, educate themselves about our software, trial it free of charge, ramp themselves, and then start spending. It also allowed us to sell into accounts that would have been difficult for a company at our stage back then. And so, we had maybe 20 people on the team at that point, and yet we're successful to selling to large cap companies all over the world. Today, as has been the case for the last few years, well over 90% of our revenue is export from our domestic market, the UK. About 2/3 of our revenue was from the US. Well over half of our revenue is from large cap companies. And so that low friction, mostly without contract sales motion, was very helpful for us. It also, both for the customer, which is always a good place to think about, one of our values is customer obsession, of course, but also for us, simplified billing and collections, and effectively means today we have 700 or so customers, but only 3 companies to invoice: Google, Microsoft, and AWS. Talked about customers. In our case, customers break down into 2 chunks. It's tech companies, like many of us here today, people like Cisco and Citrix, Zapier, MuleSoft, and Sony, and DocuSign. People innovating with data. Also for us, it's large cap companies, people like GE and Siemens and Fox and IKEA and Subway and many more. And the AWS Marketplace, in our case, was very useful for targeting those customers because it allows us to deliver the software directly into their VPC. They don't need to trust me as a small company because the actual data is all moving around inside their cloud firewall. And also it streamlines that economic purchase, click to accept end user license agreement, and a billing mechanism already set up because effectively it comes off their AWS bill and later from their Azure GCP bill. So one of the key things that I hoped would be useful to mention in the context of being successful building a business on a public cloud is that no matter how resonant the partnership, these platforms do not sell the product for you. So AWS Marketplace being one example of a way to deliver and commercialize your software, but more broadly, partnership with AWS, GCP, or Azure. These guys are not going to go out and sell Matillion for me. And so we have a stage commensurate, sophisticated go-to-market team behind the scenes that sell the software for us. But we make it super easy for the customer to launch, consume, and scale it. And it's really that is the value that AWS Marketplace plays for us. We continue, of course, to innovate with the way we commercialize our software on that platform. Just last month, we introduced a new level of pricing, and this is something that you, I think, tend to need to do as your business scales. We're at about 20 million of ARR now and a couple of hundred people, just shy of. And so customer demand and also the needs of our own business means that we've needed to add on top of our pay-by-the-hour, pay-as-you-drink pricing, a capacity-based enterprise pricing offer to service larger clients that need that flexibility. And marketplaces can help with that. AWS Marketplace, for instance, provides a facility to negotiate and close private deals inside of the platform, which we use. Later this year, we'll launch our first genuine SaaS product at re:Invent in December, and we're also adding container-based listings instead of the AMI ones that we were born on. I would say if you're considering using a marketplace, just check a couple of things, and if you're still happy that that's a great route to market for you, then I'd suggest these points for setting yourself up for success. The biggest check is to use a public cloud vendor marketplace. Your customer is only going to get benefit out of that if they're already heavily using the cloud, and ideally if they live inside the AWS console. My customers are Redshift customers, BigQuery customers on GCP, Snowflake customers. They're obviously using public clouds and used to paying for services through that platform, so it makes sense. Once you pass that decision point, I think the tips are fairly well explained just on the slide. Focusing on the launch experience is absolutely key. Some companies will just plonk their software on the marketplace and hope it sells. That doesn't work. We spent a lot of time and continue to do on the engineering experience of launching it and also clothing the software with content, videos, blogs, online support portal, and people behind the scenes to make sure customers are successful in that early stage of evaluating the software at POC. We would suggest that you leverage the programs put in place by the public cloud partners. AWS particularly are excellent at this. There's all sorts of Amazon Partner Network programs that you can co-market with, access funds with, use the benefit of their brand to de-risk things for your customers. Becoming proficient with your trading data is extremely important to work out the behaviors of your customers. That can be tactical. You know, if you see a customer spend dip or climb, you can take action off the back of that. But also it can inform your product and go-to-market roadmaps. So becoming a ninja with the data that these marketplace platforms kick out is very important. Comping your reps is very important on this stuff as well. It sounds like an obvious point. Sometimes people will use public cloud vendor marketplaces as a kind of second or third way to sell their software, and it's not naturally easy to comp your reps, but if you don't, it'll never take off. We do 20 million of recurring just through public cloud vendor marketplaces, so it's worth it if you invest in it, but you do need to motivate your sales teams. Focus on getting reviews. Of course, G2, one of the sponsors here today, we happen to be top rated on Trust Radius, the only cloud data integration product to have that accreditation. Authentic voice of the market, as crystallized in reviews, very important for an online launch experience because customers want to self-learn to make a decision around your products. And the final point, as I mentioned before, you still have to sell. I'll be knocking around for the next few minutes if anyone's got any questions, but if not, I hope that wasn't too boring. And thank you very much indeed for your time. Cheers.